has anything to say about the deindustrialization of this country.
Georgian townhouses on the moon, the highest GDP per capita in the Milky Way. Small modular reactors under every village green. This is Anglo-Futurism.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the King Charles III Space Station. I'm Calum Drysdale.
I'm Tomo, and we're lounging on the Chesterfields as usual. And before we start, a quick thanks to a friend of the show, my sister, perhaps one of our only female listeners.
No, that's not true.
Well, my mum.
There are multiple female listeners, and in fact, this is a harmful stereotype that you're engaging
That I'm
into,
perpetuating.
That you're perpetuating, exactly. So, to our female listeners, all of you,
We see you. we appreciate you.
and we're very grateful. Anyway, but tell us what was the present, Tom? What did we receive?
The gift from Eliza was a mug for each of three of us, you, me, and the boss, Aaron, our producer. And
Our Epstein. Brian Epstein.
Brian Epstein. I was 17 when he signed me up to do this podcast. These lovely mugs reference a certain hit job that tried to destroy us. And the mug, I'm cradling one now. Calum's got one too. We're both sipping Earl Grey out of them. And emblazoned on each mug is not only the Union flag, but also the phrase "dangerous intellectual," which is a great tribute to us from Hope Not Hate.
Yes, although no, both words are in fact lies.
Perhaps a little fanciful. But thank you, Eliza, and to the rest of you, we'll gladly accept pewter tankards and other gifts.
I was going to say, no, the fact that mugs get a shout out suggests just how easily we could be bought.
We're very easily bought.
It's true. It would take almost nothing to convince us to roll over, show our bellies, and to produce fawning copy for someone.
But we have another note of thanks, which is to everyone who came to our meetup a week or so.
A great success,
ago.
I thought.
It was a very jolly evening.
Although it did get quite hot, so we took up the top room of a pub, and the top room, to our immense delight, soon filled up. It also got quite warm. And in the words of one guest who arrived a little later, walked in and said, "Gosh, you can smell the engineer."
No, I couldn't smell anything. All I could feel was the white heat of innovation. It was also quite funny because people were trying to figure out how to keep the door open. It had one of those sort of magnetic consoles where you flick a switch and then it should be able to keep the door shut through the magnetism by running a current through some panel, but it wasn't quite strong enough. So we had people trying to do applied Anglo-futurism simply to keep a door open. In fact, there was one Anglo-futurist whom I will not name because he's an engineer who's doing very well on robot arms, and he tried and failed to prop the door open.
So actually might be quite damaging to his raise.
So I'm not going to shame him. But look, we'll keep putting these drinks on as long as there's appetite. So if you want to get involved, I think we'll probably just do an update on a future podcast.
Well, and they're on the Substack, so we always broadcast them there. So sign up there, and also you get to use Aaron's new app, Palander.
Should we do the whole spiel again?
No. If you didn't sign up the first time, tough luck, but maybe next time. Anyway, Tom, it has been a full week.
No, there's one more thing
really?
on our pre-bulletin, which I cleverly trailed with the reference to applied Anglo-futurism. Applied Anglo-futurism is a term that I give to projects that people would like to carry out under the banner of Anglo-futurism. And so people have got in touch with us with some great ideas. So we know one chap who wants to create a proposal basically to claim British sovereignty on an asteroid. So fundraise for a satellite launch, send the satellite to a particularly juicy looking asteroid.
What makes an asteroid juicy, Tom?
Well, I think you can tell from, I suppose, the way light reflects off it, i.e., whatever the way we see anything.
I think you are actually right. And so that is to my shame. I threw you a hospital pass, and you very very nimbly caught it.
You know that I'm a freak for geology. So I think you can probably tell the geological composition, or you can make some estimates. Maybe we can also make estimates based on what we know is going on in the Oort cloud and what else has hit Earth. But anyway, there are very juicy mineable asteroids out there, and someone ought to claim them for Britain. So that's something that someone wants to do. There's another idea, creating a drone racing championship, so that we can sort of upskill our fellow Brits in manufacturing drones. And of course, you and I would love to bring a derrick to Antarctica. So there's all these things like that. And if you're interested in doing something like that, or you have another idea and you want to find people to collaborate on, then get in touch and we will try to put all of you in a room, and then we'll leave you to it while you bring glory back to Britain.
How should people get in touch, Tom?
Anglo-futurism. Wait, what's our email address again? Okay, no, we do have special email addresses now. So mine is tom@anglofuturism.co.
Yes, and if you can figure it out, mine is Calum@anglofuturism.co, and that's Calum with one L.
With one L, famously.
So depends really.
Calum always takes the L.
Send your proposals to Tom if you want a sort of stolid. Your plan is kind of salt of the earth. Foundational, and send it to me if I don't know. It's a bit more far-fetched or fanciful. How about is that a fair division?
And if Calum can't handle it, then send it to Aaron, AERON @anglofuturism.co.
Yes, really, I have a very narrow window of capacity.
Okay, on with the show.
What's happened this week that has got everyone buzzing?
Everyone in British progress has been freaking their nut in a good way about a nuclear regulatory review. And in case any of you are living under a rock and have not read this report, I suppose if I were to summarise it, I'd say we're one step closer to having SMRs under every village green. Calum, you've read the report, right?
I've read the report cover to cover. The executive summary thereof.
What were your favourite parts?
No. The report.
It came out today. I think very few people have read the whole thing. But it's a rip snorter.
It is a rip snorter, and what people seem to be saying is that this is actually recognising the problems that all of the nerds that we know have been talking about for years. So this is that the ONR, the Office for Nuclear Regulation, has been sort of very process focused, that it has focused on like this thing that as low as possible. So trying to get the risk as low as possible, which means that you have to always put your money back into, like, when you, rather than making profit and meeting some threshold of how little radiation you emit, you always have to then improve it and upgrade it, and that there are sort of multiple regulators, which just means that getting any approval through for building one of these new plants is incredibly difficult, because you've got a whole load of people, different regulators, all to compete. I mean, it says in terms of a defence project, there are 8 different regulators.
And long-term listeners might recall an early episode that we did with Sam Demetriou from Britain Remade, and he was telling us that we have the most expensive nuclear energy in the world. I mean, we were pioneering this technology.
Wow, and we're also pioneering cost. I mean, do you remember? Do you remember off the top of your head because the number that seems to have wound everyone up is the cost per salmon.
Per salmon. Oh yes. So this is one of the most egregious things of is it
Hinkley Point?
Hinkley Point. Yeah. So the fish disco, as Michael Gove termed it, is a clever bit of underwater kit that ensures that so of course you need like cold water to keep a nuclear plant cool. And there's a small risk that fish get caught up in the cold water. And so the fish disco is a sort of underwater acoustic operation that is supposed to repulse the fish. There's also, I think, a fish retrieval mechanism, which sends the fish unharmed back into the Severn or wherever it is. But this adds up to an extraordinary cost per salmon saved, and I think it is about £280,000 per salmon. So yeah, 700 million is being spent on this kind of fish disco and related bits of kit. So that's about 5 bat tunnels.
Which actually, and that was another thing that was in the report, which said that developers, and this is something that Sam Dimitriou talked to us last year about, is that rather than having to do these very extreme sort of on-site habitat protection activities, instead developers can pay into a central fund, which will then fund conservation and habitat improvement and rebuilding elsewhere. So it means that rather than having to do sort of net neutrality, you have no impact at your site. Instead, you can say, look, this is a national priority. This is infrastructure of national priority, and you should have a streamlined process and be able to. And critically, this is what seems everyone says, and it comes from not just like nuclear, but also in. We spoke to Mary at Lindus Health the other day, and he said similarly in clinical trials, what we desperately need is companies need to just be able to pay and get the service so they can plan ahead. And the thing that really kills this stuff is the wait, is the not knowing if some civil servant in an office somewhere is going to just stick their oar in and slow down the whole process, and mean that there are tens, hundreds of people whose jobs are just on hold until this stuff can actually get through.
And so this is why, John Fingleton is the lead author of the report. John Fingleton, now a hero of Anglo-futurism, and he advises the Prime Minister to issue a directive immediately, saying that the emphasis should be on delivery rather than safetyism and proceduralism, basically. And they're also proposing to create a single regulator. But what I found really interesting about this report is that it actually strays a little beyond its brief. And Fingleton talks generally about risk aversion. He says it arises because the system punishes failure but cannot reward success. This is worsened by inconsistent and insufficient political risk appetite. He says that there's a priority in regulation in this country for process over outcome, using complex procedure as protection. And he says, finally, there's a lack of incentives aligned with the public interest. So he's kind of freewheeling and talking about every bit of regulation in this country. And it's, if you're a lover of British infrastructure, this is a pretty compelling report, I'd say. It's going like close to the root of the reasons for our having just extraordinarily expensive energy, which itself is at the root partly of our very sluggish economy.
Well, it seems, as you say, he's freewheeling, he's going out potentially, sticking his neck out and going beyond his brief. But it comes to this sort of bizarre paradox we have where increasingly people are really coalescing around these points of planning, energy, housing, I suppose, is part of planning, and then migration as these like massive problems but critically are self-inflicted problems that if we can get a grip on, will unlock a whole load of progress. And it's strange because this is happening across the board. Reformer are starting to talk like this. Labour people are starting to talk like this. The Tories are talking like this. In many ways, it's quite heartening, right? That actually the diagnoses that people have now spent, people like John Mayer, right, with in planning, and then we know a whole load of the people who have been very excited about this for nuclear, and hopefully we'll be talking to one of them later, is that actually the things that people have been shouting for years and years are now actually getting through, being spoken of at the top level, and potentially this is what winning looks like. That the country, this is the first glimpse of a country that can actually start looking at itself seriously, recognizing its own problems, and then coming up with the solutions to them. Because I think there is definitely, and I think we've talked about this, like this inability of many people in Westminster to like see what the country actually looks like, and instead to talk about a country that is basically not there or sort of fictional. And we were talking about this in reference to sort of the northern towns that many people in Westminster like have just never visited, right? I mean, you grew up outside London, didn't you? I suppose you were.
I grew up in Hertfordshire.
You were in
it's very much in the home counties commuter belt.
Yeah, hardly can be called a real, son of deep England, and neither can I, right? I mean, I grew up in Germany and then London, but in my brief forays to visit my northern girlfriend, an ex-girlfriend, it is very striking, like just how different the rest of the country is. And I know that's a truism, but it bears repeating.
Lawrence of beyond the M25 over
here. Well, Tom counts his years at Oxford as his real, time out in the sticks.
You forget that in my salad days as a cub reporter at the Telegraph, I was a professional day tripper.
Yeah, a day tripper. Day tripper, being the critical.
I did my tour down the mines of the lovely market towns of the Cotswolds.
Tom showed me the other day one of the sort of spoils of war that his journalistic period had produced, which was one of the naffest suits that I have ever seen in my entire life.
It's just appalling. It's the spivviest item in my possession.
Well, I had acquired.
I had a suit made for me for an article, and I was young and naive and tasteless and asked for every single bell and whistle. And I don't think I had a very good taste for fabric at that point. Not that I think the fabric selection would have been that nice, but the suit has these kind of small winged lapels. It was a different time. It has. I think I said yes to like every single novelty pocket on the inside. So there was even like a train ticket pocket. It has one of those sort of clever waistbands with some kind of bit of like basically machinery in there, so that you don't have to wear a belt, but you can like still kind of expand with a wedding breakfast.
The waistcoat and the lining.
Oh yeah, no, there's a waistcoat.
Yeah, and the lining that is extremely Dino.
Yeah, very very Dino, silver flashy lining. I don't know what possessed me. Anyway, if any listeners would like to garland us with made to measure suits.
Well, although you make it, it's a big question. Would we be any more tasteful now?
It's very humbling, seeing how poor your own taste was a few years ago. When I look back a few years from now at the magnificent clothes that you and I currently wear.
We'll look back and we'll think, yes, wearing exclusively corduroy was a decision that I do not regret. Although actually I should say I
want to start a fire with the sparks that come from my kind of rubbing fabrics. Very dangerous under this thatch.
No, it's true.
Oh, hang on, Calum. There's someone at the door.
And who should come in but one Robert Boswall.
And
Hello,
he stepped
Robert.
off his nuclear-powered spacecraft. Robert, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. This is a quick trip.
Well, okay, Robert. You've come from the pub. Is it fair to say that you have been carousing at the news of this at the launch and publication of this report?
Definitely very excited. The pub was booked prior to the knowledge of the report coming out today. But yes, a lot of discussing how we got here, discussing how we go from here. But yeah, the report was definitely discussed in depth. I can be assured.
We're getting so excited that we haven't explained who Robert is. Robert works for Last Energy, trying to deploy small modular reactors. Robert is doing as much as anyone except John Fingleton to introduce small modular reactors under every village green. So that's who Robert is. That's why we're so excited to have him. And this is why he's been getting pissed on a Monday night, because he lives for this stuff.
I do live for this stuff. The rest of it, I neither confirm nor deny.
So is it like Christmas for all the kind of nuclear freaks in the policy sphere?
It's a lot.
Santa has come down the chimney with a kind of huge sack of regulation cutting proposals.
I think I had no idea that there would be this kind of a interest or uptake for this. Like, people who I thought were very conservative or non-radical, quite sort of happy with the status quo. Turns out they hate the status quo. They really want to, revitalize nuclear, and vast arrays of people inside the industry, outside the industry, ex-regulators, etc., all excited for this in a way that I thought there would be, I thought every think tanker would love this. I didn't expect the Nuclear Institute to endorse every single one of the recommendations, or the Nuclear Industry Association, which is actually a separate body, to also call for the implementation of these regulations. Urenco, which is a uranium mining company, like everyone is very excited by this. It really feels like there is a huge number of things that have gone unsaid for a long time, and Fingleton and his merry band have broken cover, and now suddenly people feel free and happy. Like, frankly, even me on this podcast, it's like, oh, actually, I can now talk about these things in a public sphere that previously people might not talk about.
What was preventing people from talking, about like the fish disco? Surely that is just kind of straightforwardly terrible policy. I don't understand why there would be this kind of deadening effect.
And yet it took a number 10 instrumented task force in order to find that out. Right, people have been hunting for that number. Britain Remade or Michael Gove, who first popularized the term fish disco. People have been asking, what does this thing cost? Right, like what are we actually spending on this? And could not find the answer without the powers of a executive task force. So I can only guess why that's the case, but it clearly is the case.
Well, and maybe, Robert, you could sort of tell us what sort of being in the industry up to now has felt like, because it seems like the report is so damning that actually working in nuclear and trying to deliver nuclear, is painted in such an awful way. Like what was it like trying to get this through? I mean, I suppose there's no guarantee that these recommendations all get taken.
I think that's
What is the feeling and what does it take to get this stuff actually across the line at the moment with the current set of rules?
So let's pick one, and pick quite a big one, which is tolerability of risk. And I think that this is like a good example to give to your question, which is that up until now, the regulators and the industry have both been groping around to understand what is an acceptable level of risk. And this isn't just radiation. This is also like at-work accidents, or frankly, like the impact on fish. Or that's kind of slightly separate, but a similar sort of question of trying to figure out what acceptable trade-offs are. And what it was like up until now was that any cost was worth additional safety. If it could be shown to in any way improve the safety of a plant, improve the safety of a worker, then any cost was acceptable, even the cost of £700 million to save whatever number of fish. And what this report is saying is actually no, costs matter, trade-offs matter. We've got to be thinking about what best delivers, for the British people, for our energy needs, for our energy security needs. This report also covers military uses of nuclear, military regulation of nuclear. So this is also our constant at sea deterrent, right? Like, what are the trade-offs that we should be working under here? And it very clearly says that that is a decision for government, that we have good, clear guidelines of how to do that. We have good international standards, we have good precedents in other industries, but that actually it is not the place of industry or the Office of Nuclear Regulation, which is the primary regulator in this space, to say what a tolerable standard of risk is. That is a political decision, which I personally strongly agree with, that actually these trade-offs have to be set at a political level because they have the sort of mandate to decide that. And that is a mandate that has been being abandoned up until now. And so we in the industry have been standing there having to essentially repeat this mantra on safety at any cost, whilst ignoring the fact that actually increased cost reduces safety. So, the longer we don't have nuclear power built in this country is the longer that we keep having to burn gas or keep having expensive electricity or keep having insecure electricity. And that is itself a detriment to safety.
I mean, Robert, you say that there was safety at any cost. And what did this look like for you? So this is just interminable risk assessments, or this is like the buying of new pieces of equipment when they become available, like constant upgrading, like what does this materially look like if you're trying to build a nuclear power plant?
So I'm not necessarily the best person to answer that question because I have never built a nuclear power plant. But I think a thing that is like worth getting into is if you have a sense of trade-off, if you have a sense of what is an acceptable risk, then you can simply put aside a lot of things and prioritize the things that might actually impact that risk. And so you can say, right, okay, we don't need to think too deeply about, say, tsunami impact, because the probability of that is incredibly low in this country. And so we just don't really need to sort of worry about that until down the line. It's probably worth double checking, but it shouldn't be kind of high on the list. Because the probability of it is very low, and even the impact, should it happen, is quite low, or at least the relative impact of the nuclear aspect. And instead, it's a requirement like, no, you absolutely have to kind of completely bottom that out with thorough modeling and impact analysis. And this is true for various different risks. But if you have clear guidelines on what is tolerable risk and what is not tolerable risk, then it becomes much easier to prove. The other thing is we are largely dealing with what Admiral Rickover, the godfather of or the grandfather of the nuclear navy, described as academic reactors, or people often call paper reactors, which is they haven't been built, so we have to prove their safety on a theoretical basis. So you have to do that through modeling, you have to do that through various forms of engineering design, and you have to do that through testing of certain equipment, certain qualification work, etc. And your margins really matter when you are doing those things, because models are accurate to within a given margin, or your substantiation of a particular material is accurate to within a given margin. And if those margins are really tight, or if those requirements are really strict, then this becomes arguably impossible. Like there is a point at which this is impossible, because the requirements are so strict that they are beyond the capabilities of computer modeling, beyond the absolute certainties of certain materials, etc. So by making more realistic margins and more sort of realistic trade-offs that are still, to be clear, incredibly safer than any other industry, you massively enable new ways to bring information to bear, or new ways to bring new innovations to bear. So like an example used in the task force report is about a duty holder, which means someone applying for a license or someone who holds a nuclear license, deciding not to bring forward a technological advancement, specifically in the context of modularization, because they just didn't really think that they had, it wasn't worth the effort. They didn't have the substantiation to sort of prove that it was safer than what they already did. And so they just didn't really want to get into this whole space of, is it making it safer? Is it worth the trade-offs? Because there was not clear guidelines on which to do it. And so they didn't even bring it forwards, right? It wasn't the case they brought it forwards and the regulator said no. There was just such a kind of preemptive culture that they just said, it's just not worth the headache. Whereas if you had a clear cost-benefit analysis, something similar to what the Treasury Green Book does, then that would be a much more straightforward process, and you'd be able to go, okay, right, we can quantify, this saving, it's worth this benefit. We should go ahead with this.
But there's a difference between the task force writing this report and the report actually finding its way into law, right? What has to happen to make it a reality?
So there's a number of things. The task force has 47 different recommendations. These span nuclear regulation. They span actually sort of culture, which I think is a really interesting thing that the report gets quite deep into. Also gets into a lot of planning legislation and a lot of environmental guidance. So the headline recommendation is a nuclear regulatory commission, or actually I think a commission for nuclear regulation. I think it's said the other way around. And this would be the delivery body for a lot of the nitty-gritty, a lot of the real detail on the nuclear regulatory side. And I think that is really important because you can't deliver these things on an arm's length basis. You do need to kind of really get into the detail, get into the questions. Then there are other things like a personal campaign of mine that kind of is what got me into a lot of this, is something called regulatory justification. You could fix that with a statutory instrument, basically tomorrow. If you really wanted to, you could pass legislation to sort of fix it even more permanently.
And sorry, what is that? Sorry.
So regulatory justification. This is my favorite. This is what got me.
I could see Robert was so excited to talk about it.
So regulatory justification is an entirely separate, random requirement in order to build a nuclear power plant in Britain. It is inherited, or it is passed down to us from the European Union directive. And passed into law by what's called the Justification of Practices Involving Ionizing Radiation Regulations, or JOPRA. And what it basically says is, in order to use ionizing radiation, the benefits have to outweigh the costs, which is a perfectly reasonable starting principle. And this applies to other forms of ionizing radiation. This applies to X-rays, DEXA scanners, various other various medical uses of ionizing radiation. And what should happen is you say, okay, X-rays are justified. We have a regulatory regime, we have best practice in place for how to use X-rays. And so we consider that if they obey those rules, then the benefits outweigh the costs. Brilliant, done, right? And that is what we have done for the vast majority of uses of ionizing radiation. For just kind of random reasons of history, in the late noughties, early 2010s, nuclear power, you have to do a new justification of practices application for every design. This costs meaningful amounts of money. This costs in the sort of hundreds of thousands, low millions, if you combine the cost to the applicant and the cost to the government to get this document. And this document doesn't do anything additive. There is nothing covered in this document that is not already covered by planning policy, it is government policy. It is official government policy that the benefits of nuclear outweigh the detriments, right? That is they ran on that in the manifesto. Every government for the last however long has held that position. But instead, you have to do this additional process on top of licensing, design assessment, planning permission, all the other environmental permits, etc. And it gains you nothing, to the point that the former nuclear minister under this very government, Lord Hunt, who's the nuclear minister until a few months ago, he also, the moment he retired, he stood up and said in the Lords, we should absolutely get rid of this. And I think that, just coming back to the task force, I think the task force has done an amazing job at getting people to really think about these problems in a way that they were just kind of coasting by. No one had really kind of faced up to them. And if they had faced up to them, they'd said, it's just not really my problem. I just don't really, need to fix this. Or they'd sort of gone up the chain. They've not really got any traction for it. That's the only way I personally could explain to myself how, a intelligent, switched on, good person like Lord Hunt doesn't manage to get this over the line while in government, and then the moment he's out of government, he believes he's publicly open about this. And what I should have said is, in government, he didn't take a position on this. He didn't recommend this. He didn't sort of act on this, at least not externally. And so there clearly are these frictions or sources of malaise in the system that only apparently something like a task force can cut through.
So what's the outlook then? Will there be enough kind of overhanging malaise for it still to be difficult for us to have those fabled SMRs under village greens? Are we going to get cheaper power as a result of the task force's report? What's going to happen?
If these recommendations got passed, I personally believe that like even Sizewell would get cheaper, as in even something that is already that far down the line, even something that already has planning, already has gone through a lot of processes. I believe that even Sizewell would get cheaper, and in that sense, Sizewell is already on our bills as of this month. So in that sense, yes, it would bring down that. And I think it would, massively enable the Rolls-Royce SMR deployment. It would enable, our deployment as well. I think the ability for this to be a watershed moment in the culture of nuclear delivery across regulation, industry, government. Like the report is very clear, there is enough blame to go around. The ability for this to be a watershed moment in the culture of the industry, such that we do not only think about safety in a narrow sense, but also think about second order effects on cost, could be transformative.
Like what explains, other maybe than the fact that we just don't build that many nuclear power plants, like what explains the reluctance to do this in the past, and why does it take this force? Like why does it take someone sitting down and like doing the survey of the whole industry to be able to like address this? Like why is these systems not able to self-fix?
I think people don't want to be seen to be watering down regulation. Like even if actually, and this is a great point that the report makes, which is that simpler regulation, less regulation, but that achieves better outcomes, is safer, because you can actually understand it, right? Like the safety cases for a lot of today's nuclear power plants are unintelligible for any one individual to actually understand, because they are so complex. Like the Nimrod review, which is a incredibly dry but fantastic report into an RAF plane that crashed as part of the Afghanistan conflict. It really gets into this, and it says that like actually more paper is often more dangerous. So there is a false equivalency that simplification is deregulation, or that removing barriers is somehow removing safety or reducing safety. So I think that's a huge amount of the sort of blocking force. And then I think also just nuclear in particular, more than most others, responsibility is split across a lot of different areas. So fun fact, the Office for Nuclear Regulation reports the Department for Work and Pensions. It's not the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. It's not any other sort of part of the government you might expect it to be part of. Instead, the Department for Work and Pensions.
Nuclear as a jobs program.
That's a tough political point that is also potentially true. For weird historical reasons, it reports the Department for Work and Pensions. But then regulatory justification is decided by DEFRA, the Department for Environment, Farming and Rural Affairs. But then the policy department is DESNES, because it's energy. But then Treasury obviously is very involved. So like there is no one entity that really has the auspices over this to actually decide what should and shouldn't be the case. And also I think there is a fear in central government, by which I mean the civil service and the departments, of interfering in independently regulated spheres where civil servants do not consider themselves expert. So they defer to the regulators, and then the regulators very reasonably defer to them, whereby the civil servant says, well, I don't know what's safe enough in a nuclear power plant, and that's a question for the inspectors. They're the experts. And the inspectors say, well, actually, no, like that's a political question that needs to be decided by you, because that's a question of, trade-offs and relative values. And so what, again, is fantastic about this task force is that you have someone like Fingleton who is able to think in these kind of regulatory incentives perspectives. Like if you read the report, it is awash with considerations of incentives. And then you have the other 4 members of the task force who are, just expert beyond repute in their respective fields of, be that engineering, be that planning law, be that nuclear regulation, or radiation safety. Respectively, they have each one of those 4 pieces of expertise. And so they can have that confidence as a body to weigh in on any of the issues across this realm, across this sphere, and know what they're looking at and know what they're talking about.
Well, since you mentioned John Fingleton, one final question: is it time for a knighthood?
I don't know enough about his. I know he's very famous for breaking up a taxi mafia or a sort of maybe not mafia but a taxi monopoly. But I mean, yes, for my space, for what I care about, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. We'll send you back down to the party that I'm sure is happening in your office. You can return to the conga line.
The LinkedIn party.
The LinkedIn party.
No, there's work to be done, but
there's work to be done. He might actually have to build a nuclear power plant now. So he's actually,
they've called my bluff. This was supposed to just be a job for life. I didn't think I actually have to do anything.
God, concrete. How much concrete could you possibly need?
Yeah, watch out, Village Greens. Robert's on his way.
Well, thank you very much for coming and talking to us, and we hope to hear more from you when you with a comically large pair of scissors are opening up your fresh new power plant.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you'll certainly be invited.
Calum, there's another knock at the door.
Or something at the door.
Go on. Well, who is it?
Knock, knock.
I actually don't know
Calum,
who is.
knock, knock.
Oh, knock, knock.
You say who's there when I
who's
say
there? Who's there? Oh, sorry.
For God's sake, knock, knock.
Who's there? Tom has been threatening me all day with this game that he calls slaughtering the sacred cow.
It's called Sacred Cow, and we were petitioning some of our friends and listeners for stuff to talk about, really, on this episode. And one of them brought up this game that we inflicted on poor old Dan Tomlinson MP, which I don't think he was expecting. Where we had an interview with, he was then Labour's Growth Champion, now he's been promoted. And we marched some metaphorical sacred cows into the studio. And we said to Dan, council housing in Zone 1, would you move it to raise some money? And he would have to say, because he'd been talking a good game on growth, and we wanted to see actually where the limits were. So that is the game of Sacred Cow, and Calum, you and I are about to play just that game. So that moo denotes the entry of the. I mean, you can see this huge heifer in front of you.
Yeah.
It's
the cow in the room. The cow in the room.
Yeah, the cow in the room. And you will have the choice: save the cow at the expense of the economy, or kill the cow.
I've got my what's it called? My bolt gun out. Hit me.
Okay, Sacred Cow number 1, the greenbelt.
Which greenbelt?
The greenbelt surrounding London, the one that you've never gone beyond.
That's not true. No, because I asked because Although, man is conservative about all things that he holds dear, right? Or he knows best about. Clearly, I would get rid of it. It's most of it is disused petrol stations, like scrubland.
No, it's not. That's a psyop. That's a Yimby psyop.
It's all petrol stations.
That's what Max Marlowe wants you to believe.
No. No, but it clearly it is not serving like the role that it should. And it's just the same thing. This is exactly the same thing as the nuclear point.
But there's a difference, right, between the odd bit of petrol station or brownfield, and the reality that there are kind of rolling hills in Buckinghamshire, nice things in the greenbelt. I'm sorry. This
is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Like,
so whole thing.
You have
planning.
At the first hurdle. Like this, the southeast is the only productive, like net productive part of the country, and clearly, this is an area where we need more people coming and working and living. I mean,
but London is a fraction of the density that it should be at. I mean, compare it to Tokyo. Think how I used to live in Kennington, and there were kind of actually even here we live I think on the edge of Zone 2, and there are bungalows near us.
No, sure.
Within a 5-minute walk.
I totally accept that, but that's not an excuse.
This is not gentle density. These are not Nicholas Boy Smith's kind of 4-story Georgian townhouses.
But that doesn't justify not building outside.
No, it's an alternative. We don't need to.
It's why limit ourselves?
Okay. I'll tell you why. And I'm going to checkmate you, because sure, you love building and you would like to see London expand.
Yep.
But who's going to fill the houses? As much as you love building, you hate immigration. And it's just going to have to be more kind of Boris waivers if we double the size of London.
No, that's not true. That's not true. Because actually, people outside of London are just as much the victims of this as the people already in London, right? Like,
we can add several million more people to London while hardly doing any mischief to the greenbelt, I would think.
Sure, but you're missing the point, right? Which is that we have to build more in and around London, and the fact that, say, if you are born outside of London and you don't have family there that you can fall back upon if things get tough, the high rent and the lack of housing becomes like existential, right? I mean, I had a flatmate who, and I was probably too casual about this, I think, looking back, who, when it came time to sort of change flats, she would become like super anxious. And this was because, whilst for me I thought, a couple of days here, if I don't quite get the overlap, it's fine. I can go and live, live at home. I can go and move home for a bit, or stay with a friend, whatever. It wasn't a big deal for me. She grew up in Bristol, and for her it was existential, and it meant literally the difference between being able to live in London and do her job and potentially that all falling away if she did not have somewhere to live. And I think that's the real tax that we've put on people.
Well, it stops people taking risks.
Exactly.
They don't innovate. I mean, I agree with you on all of this, of course. And the boomers who rule us do not perceive how damaging it is to young people's ability to live here, their proclivity to take risks. It damages the economy in all kind of ways. And also, I think our point of difference is that I think we could just double the density of housing in London.
Sure, but I also think that there's stuff here that isn't just housing. In that, we supposedly want to be doing a whole lot more science. So labs and warehouses would also be things that could be built, right? It's not just housing. It's also,
of course.
If I want to open like a manufacturing facility, I don't want it to be in the centre of London, because that would be ridiculous. But I also don't want to be too far away from London. So that the greenbelt land there that is kept for the benefit of the sort of idly engaged rentier class pensioners and their like consultant offspring, frankly, leaves me cold.
Well, to our listeners, the struggling family of Puddlemere Farm in Buckinghamshire, which has been in the family for 300 years, I'm sorry to break the news that Calum is killing that cow.
No, you'll make an absolute fortune.
Calum.
despite the fact that we have
That
a
was the bolt gun.
We have
that
a
was the bolt
producer.
gun administered straight to the head
We have
of
a
that cow.
producer, an extremely good producer. Tom here is doing his own sound effects.
No, Aaron has permitted me to do this.
Okay.
On to the next sacred cow, which is waddling into our increasingly bloody studio here in the KC3. The sacred cow is national parks.
Which ones?
Lake District, Peak District. I mean, are there any that you wouldn't preserve?
I mean, the ones closer into London.
Like Thorntocks.
I mean, if I'm actually gonna be honest, I read the book, The Lost Rainforests of Britain by Guy Shrubsole.
Incredible nominative determinism, by the way.
Exactly.
He's a guy who walked through vegetation. He's a man who walked through vegetation. His name is Guy Shrubsole.
Amazing book, and hopefully we're going to do an episode on temperate rainforests soon. And there may even be a druidic ritual involved. Who knows? Largely depends on whether I can convince Tom to take his kit off, because communing with nature is very important in these rituals.
Take my kit off for that.
Well, there you go.
I'm the one who was born outside the M25, Calum.
I was born outside the M25
in Germany.
I was born a lot further away from London than you.
Were you born in a? I suppose I was born in a town. Were you born in a city?
No, a town.
I don't think either of us has a good claim to be a
I was in a Frankfurt commuter belt dormitory town, so I can't really claim anything. Anyway, point is, he makes the point that places like Dartmoor, Exmoor, the Lake District, the Peak District, in their current capacity are actually deserts. They are scarred remnants of farming, and particularly sheep farming, that is really, really destructive to natural wildlife, because sheep are so omnivorous that they will, or so voracious, maybe I should say, that they will come and just eat any sapling, any small shrub, which means that you get these deserts of monocultures of just grass, and they don't have the roots that can maintain the soil. So you get big runoff, you get these collapsing banks where rainwater comes and just washes away all the soil. And that actually, Britain's natural state really is to be wooded. And that actually, what I'd love to see, to respond to your points about the greenbelt, is actually some destruction of both urban areas, but also some of these areas that have been left. I think UNESCO, the Peak District was
UNESCO has designated the Lake District a World Heritage Site.
Exactly.
And the environmentalists are pissed off about that, because it means this locks in sheep farming forever, and they had these skepticism. But my argument, Calum, as I made on the episode with Shiv Malik, is that the optimal form of the British countryside is something that we've already arrived at. It's been terraformed by our ancestors. Sure, there's room for more forest and wood, but wouldn't you prefer to live in the countryside to pretty much any kind of environment on the planet?
I think the countryside, in its sort of Ruskin, William Morris form, is beautiful and without compare. I think the tragedy, as I described, right, is increasingly everyone in Britain lives in towns. So there are not these repositories of rural life, and actually, if they are, they're largely filled by old people, right? Who are not going and dancing in the hay. It's retirees who enjoy their views. I mean, my grandma has campaigned against a motorway in Buckinghamshire because it would spoil her view. Clearly the interests of Britain here must outweigh these people who call on nostalgic visions for the benefit of their own aesthetics and their own house prices.
Let me take you off your soapbox and confront you with a dilemma. Would you want to start building houses in the Lake District?
I don't think the Lake District. I mean, this is a hybrid cow. This is maybe a bison or a water buffalo. But
would you have a strict limit on any kind of building in the national parks?
I think clearly
that's the question.
I think the national parks close into London could be re-examined. I don't think there are any. I mean, like Box Hill? I suppose I don't think that's a national park, but that's a sort of area that has been kept wooded. That I think should be, one should eye it.
Chiltern Hills, area of national or natural beauty, I should say.
I just think, unfortunately, I'm sure. You know what I'm sure was really beautiful were the Docklands. Before in 300 BC. I'm sure the Thames estuary was a beautiful place.
So you're killing this beautiful specimen of cow in front of you.
Tom, there is not even a pang of doubt in me.
All right.
Yeah, I think...
Here we go. He's holding the bolt to the head. One last plaintive look from those big brown eyes. It's all over. Jesus Christ, Calum.
I would have stunned it.
Blood all over my corduroy.
I would have stunned it.
Well, it's not going to be halal slaughter on this podcast.
You are engaging in halal slaughter. I would have stunned it first.
It was a bolt straight to the head, administered by you. All right, Zone 1 council housing.
You're teeing up. You're teeing up the easiest, the absolute easiest.
Fish in a barrel.
Yeah, gone. I mean, there was a good CapEx article about it, right? Which was, these are the most productive areas. Frankly, if you want people to be able to live in London and be massively subsidised, and so I can't remember who it was. Someone makes the point that we shouldn't call it social housing; we should call it subsidised housing. Yeah,
well, I think there's there are different ways of framing this, and there are certainly lots of people who I'm glad that it's kind of we the taxpayer can house. Obviously, the situation has changed a little since we, as a country, built so much social housing in zones 1 and zone 2, with the effect that we're sacrificing like extraordinary amounts of tax receipts by keeping these areas as council housing.
I think it's also worth pointing out.
Well, and there's the aggravating feature that it seems to become quite easy to come to the country and acquire social housing, to the extent that
I think I want to make the point that the reason that so many of these properties are occupied by foreign heads of house with foreign families is there was a transition from like time on the waiting list, which obviously supports incumbents, to need. So you'd have people who previously you'd be on the waiting list for a good long time. It suggested that you lived in the area, and also it was really, really strict in terms of behaviour. Like, you were expected to, not be noisy. You have to not play music, and you had to be felt to be of good character. So these were given to sort of nurses and the what were called the deserving poor. And there was a real pride in it, because if you were chosen, it was an evidence of your good character. And I remember I was working as a barman in a restaurant in Wandsworth a couple of years ago, and there was a guy, I don't really know why he came in. It was a French restaurant, and the sort of old, I mean basically one of the last Cockneys, I mean that sort of thing. He was a Cockney, and he was a leaded glass repairman. So he would go and fix stained glass windows, and he said there are basically none of them. So I said, actually, apparently there are big developments that are held up because the developer signs up to do something, and the council says, yeah, but you have to repair XYZ piece of leaded glass, and they'll just say yes to get the contract, but they can't find them for love or money. So that's quite a good gig apparently to get into. But he would talk about how, like, the council block that he lived in was occupied by incredibly antisocial, like often recent immigrants who would then like basically push people out who couldn't bear to live there, and it became just a hub of criminality in Wandsworth.
I don't think many, except like the most kind of red-blooded Randians, are saying that many people in social housing couldn't just be rehoused somewhere that makes more economic sense. If you just think of the amount of money that could be raised through tax just by getting productive people into central London, that could fund wonderful social housing slightly further out in London. Seems a win-win.
Yeah, but I think also let's move beyond this subsidized housing model. That the argument that's always trotted out is, oh, but what about the teachers? What about the nurses? What about the cleaners? Frankly, if you want to have a cleaner in central London, maybe you should have to pay more. That actually,
well, yeah, maybe everyone else shouldn't be subsidising.
Exactly.
Your,
this is a transfer. This is a monetary transfer from basically to the wealthiest to subsidise low productivity workers, so that you and I can get our get our shirts ironed. People on mopeds come and deliver food. It's a transfer, and clearly this is not good for Britain.
Okay, so that cow is dead on the floor on the flagstones. I'm gonna give you a slightly harder one, Calum, and bear in mind that this game is about prosperity. On Anglo-futurism, we want this country to be prosperous at any cost, or almost any cost, because the next cow waddling in is the Christmas cow.
Was that a particularly? How does one find a Christmas sound effect?
Mood. There should have been. It's not a sound effect. It's a real cow. But I'm talking about public holidays at Christmas and Easter. So there's an Easter cow as well.
Interesting.
Public holidays are bad for GDP.
Yeah, I mean, no. I will. This cow.
You're gonna stay your hand.
There was a friend of ours made the point that we exist in a sort of anarcho-tyranny when it comes to GDP. Is that despite everyone claiming that they're doing things for the sake of GDP is still zero, and all the things we care about are destroyed. The Boris wave is obviously a good example of this. That despite this vast influx of people that supposedly is going to turbocharge our economy, we're still pootling along in the economic equivalent, Tom, of your VW Beetle from the from the 60s.
That is absolutely outrageous slander.
Listeners,
she's very nippy.
Listeners, I've sat in that car. And we drove down the motorway, and at one point we pulled into a service station and realised that the brakes had been on for the last 40 miles. We just hadn't been able to tell because the speed we'd been going was so normal.
The plumes of smoke pouring out of her rump, I'm afraid.
So I would say that's not necessarily one that actually would benefit us, and actually it seems pretty soulless.
So in cowardly fashion, you are electing not to kill the Christmas cow.
Well, Tom, I have to say you've given me some quite easy ones. I've got a list, I think, of rather more.
There'll be no beefsteak for young Timmy this Christmas.
I think I've got some more fiendish ones.
All right, I'll give you one more difficult one.
Okay, go on then.
Okay, we can have 5% GDP growth for the next few years, but there's another Boris wave every year.
See, this was one that I was trying to think of how would I phrase this for you.
Oh, sorry, we should do the Boris wave cow.
that was the Boris wave.
There are so many of them.
I think you've got to press that sound effect. Sorry. Welcoming that cow. Another 999,000. I think clearly it's a false economy, right? If you were to say
that's coward talk.
Okay. I think I'll rephrase it. What type of migration would it take for me to say that I would accept 1 million people into this country again in a single year? Is that reasonable?
I think it's a different question, but it's a worthy one.
So I would say that the only basis for and this I think this is assuming that they're coming on the same terms as the Boris wave, i.e. on a route that gives them a path to citizenship. would be
Come as a plant potter, bring your whole family.
exactly. Come as a bum wiper. These are vital skills that nowhere.
People think we're taking the piss, but you can get a skilled visa today for being a poet.
Yeah. Which, as Tom knows, having spent 3 years up
doing an English
an
literature degree. these should be British jobs for British English literature graduates.
I've never seen you pen some lines, some verses.
Well, it's because I get outcompeted on a cost basis by by the Boris waivers.
Did you never tempted whilst up at college to put your pen to paper?
He's batting his eyelashes, just dying for me to write him a sonnet or something. We'll have to see. But you got to give us this number.
No, I would say, okay. I'll rephrase it. I'll say were people from sort of culturally similar countries, or even diaspora style visas from Australia, New Zealand, America, Canada.
No, we're talking Boris wave style.
No.
There's no amount of GDP growth. What if we?
I mean, it's a ridiculous question because it's not. We've tried it. That's like saying, what if your IQ would increase by bashing your head against a brick wall? It's a total false economy.
I think you're chickening out. If I had a chicken in my soundboard, I would be smashing it. Okay, you've chickened out. Turn the tables.
No, I think clear the damage, and actually, I mean, I think we can maybe talk about.
I think I'd probably accept. I mean, there's got to be some amount of growth that I'd accept.
Over what length of time?
I don't know. If we add 50% to our GDP over like 5 years.
And what, do you have to keep doing it? I mean, I just think
you don't have to keep. I don't know.
But the point is, it's a ridiculous scenario.
Yeah. No. Of course. That's the nature of sacred cow.
No. I'm going to hit you. I think I'm going to hit you with some actual ones that will require you to actually, weigh up these questions.
All right, hit me.
Would you accept, in order to improve crime around the country, that comes at the sort of deal is there is then incredibly harsh punishment on sort of middle class minor criminality. So this means we're getting like 16-year-olds dragged out of house parties for having a spliff or drinking like beer too early. This means like people, I don't know what some other ones, like maybe your cheeky bag habit, not yours, but maybe some of our others. Get punished incredibly harshly as a way of basically saying this is going to be fair.
How harshly are we talking?
I'm talking like prison sentences. Like maybe it's a few weeks, but the point is that if we're going to have like restore a sense of like order, but kind of respect for the law, that even people who are basically harmless have to be punished incredibly harshly.
I'm actually quite tempted by that scenario, and the reason I think is that the spectre of criminality is not always tangible in our lives, but it's insidiously there nevertheless. I'm sure listeners will sometimes feel discomfort walking certain streets at night. I think there are probably lots of small ways that we adapt ourselves to criminality. I'm also pretty persuaded the view that most criminality comes from a small number of people who appear to be released onto the streets time and time again after committing small crimes, with huge spillover effects to the rest of us. We pay more for our groceries. We pay more for
sure. I mean, yeah, but we're assuming that all these people go to jail.
Yeah,
but the way that this is argued is that then potentially your son, Tom Jr.,
young Athelstan,
potentially faces being sent to prison and having a criminal record, for a misstep, for basically something harmless.
What, for drinking a pint after 17 years and 364 days of his life?
Yeah,
weeks in prison.
Yeah, maybe a week in detention. or a caning or something like that. Something really quite extreme.
At this point, it does get quite unpleasant because it offends my sense that an Englishman should be able to do largely as he pleases, if he's not affecting other people's quality of life. I am tempted to say that I'd at least like us to experiment with this. I think it could be so wonderful to have a virtually crime-free society that perhaps we would tolerate this imposition of some level of authoritarianism into our lives.
Because I do think this is it's an example of like this sort of elite sense that has existed for a while, and I think is now spilling over. That there was a long-held feeling that elites basically should be allowed to kind of do what they've felt because, as I said before, if you're wealthy, you can do heroin and it's kind of fine. But it seems to be that like some sense of fairness would be the only way of doing it.
Yeah, well, I don't think Athelstan is going to be collared by the plod by plod very often. I say we try it. let's at least condemn a part of the country to live under this regime and see how they like it.
Okay, interesting.
Obviously, with lots of caveats. I'm just having to kind of choose between A and B. But yeah.
Okay.
Next cow.
My next one.
March her in.
Sale of Antarctica, and we become more of a sort of financial services Singapore style centre, that basically the country we say, actually, the comparative advantage we have is in financial services. Actually, the best thing we could be doing is putting everyone into services, and we will be the kind of Luxembourg or Monaco of the world. No one will have a sort of real job. It will all be kind of fake, Instagram-y, but it will mean that people's quality of lives will get better because there'll be genuine growth.
And do we know what the Antarctica scenario is in terms of growth?
Say it's maybe we get massively preferable trade and like specialized sort of favored nation status for either America or China, that gives us like a unique access into their market. That means like capital flows into us and through us, sort of same way that, what was it that they called the euro dollars were all traded in London. Was it euro dollars or euro bonds? I can't remember. But there was some like financial instrument that the city really traded on in the 80s and 90s. Like this kind of thing. And we just say, look, actually, the thing we're going to do is we're going to churn out people, and they're going to go and be consultants or.
Oh, right. So this is still a non-Antarctica scenario.
Yeah.
So if we keep Antarctica, we're less rich, but we have more meaning.
Yeah. That it's a kind of that we specialize down, we narrow our kind of horizons, but people's quality of lives get better, and like they have more money in their pocket.
You're still not telling me anything about the Antarctica scenario.
I'm saying that the Chinese, that was the deal. That the Chinese say, we'll give you privileged nation status in exchange for handing over your.
But
slice
what happens
of
if we keep Antarctica?
Oh, then we kind of keep plodding along in our own way, as
and we don't do anything with it.
Maybe we do, maybe we don't.
We do. Okay, so
but the point
some
is,
uncertainty.
The point is that there is a big opportunity that if you were sort of being dynamic, you potentially trade the thing that you have now for something potentially more valuable.
I'm keeping that cow.
You're keeping Antarctica?
Yeah, because according to this scenario, we're not necessarily poorer as a result. I think if we continue to specialize in financial services, we expose ourselves to a lot of risk. I think there's something really quite important about having a frontier as a country. I think keeping our bit of Antarctica gives us, gives us a decent deck of cards when it comes to the next generation of robotics or the next generation of mineral wealth, or developing technology to harvest the resources that we could also use in off-world environments as well. I know, of course, I'm pretty romantically attached to the British Antarctic Territory too, so I'm keeping the cow.
Fair enough. What about then ending of almost all humanities teaching, and that early on you're basically filtered into a technical track? Many people are assigned to some sort of field to become, and they basically said, you're going to go and become a technician, you're going to go and become a PCR machine operator, you're going to go and do CNC milling. The skilled become engineers, and there is a real decline in basically the care that anyone pays for any of the. And I suppose there's somewhat cultural and there's somewhat top down directed, but that the sort of literary and cultural values are basically abandoned in favor of a technical nation. So we become a bit more like Germany now.
It's a massive gain for GDP at the cost of all kinds of educational freedom and
and then all the declines that come of it, right? We'd probably do much less in the way of films or writing or books and things like that.
So the grad grind scenario.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm probably saying no to the grad grind scenario. I'm keeping the cow.
Go on.
I am keeping this cow because I'm aware that if we sacrifice growth, then we're sacrificing health and long lives and all these things that we can do with prosperity, right? So I just want to kind of anchor this conversation in what it actually means to sacrifice growth. And so I don't know exactly the kind of numbers of this scenario. There's probably some point at which it does become worth it to sacrifice most people's ability to choose their careers and most people's ability to benefit in a fulfilling way from the cultural richness that we've inherited. But I also think that we want growth not for itself, but for secondary reasons. So some of them, some of these reasons are to do with kind of living longer, healthier lives, all that kind of thing. But some of them are also simply kind of enjoying the cultural fruits that exist. The whole point of growth is, I think, to kind of live happy, fulfilled lives. And if we prevent ourselves from having the chance of doing that, then it strikes me that there's not much point in growth at all if the sacrifices are that deep.
Yeah, I think that's a good line, and I think it's one that we need to think about a bit more, right? Or come the answers are.
We don't want to turn this whole country into like an Amazon warehouse.
Yeah, I do want. I mean,
we want to keep what's precious about it.
Yeah, there's a very good
keep the countryside, keep the cultural commons.
Yes, but I mean, you saw
keep
like
it a kind of recognizable, cohesive place to live.
Yeah, but you saw like do you remember when Rishi Sunak suggested that everyone should have to learn maths up until A level? Which I think is a pretty reasonable claim. Did you say silly?
I think it's silly because people shouldn't be in school. A lot of people don't need to be in school till the age of 18.
Fair enough, but I'm to talk about the absolutely hysterical reaction that people had, right? Which was, this is authoritarian, this is insane, this is destroys the arts. Like clearly there is a section of like sort of status conscious but like monetarily poor people for whom like cultural values and these sort of intangible status games are more important than the like progress that you referred to, right? That is so beneficial.
I think one thing to bear in mind when we discuss this scenario is the revealed preference of actually existing people. And they will often sacrifice some implicit amount of income in order to do something they think is worthwhile, right? So not everyone earns the maximum that they can. They will do prestigious careers, or they will do careers that they think are ethical. And I think this is a clue to the reality that it wouldn't be right to force people to do the most economically efficient jobs that they can.
Yeah,
I would also kind of doubt the state's ability to choose. Is it the kind of UK state?
No, sure,
that chooses...
but surely, in the sort of the breakneck book, right, which is government of lawyers versus government of engineers, like having more technically minded people is good, and clearly there is like an upper limit of the number of TV production assistants that you can have. There are only so many coffees that the talent needs, whilst whilst it is always good to have more technically trained people. And like some of this stuff is just guidance, right? Like an intelligent state will just try and like on the margin try and push some people one way versus the other.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm much more inclined to take that kind of option. It's the kind of brutal authoritarianism of forcing people into these careers that I object to. So because the terms of the question were so brutish, I'm preserving the cow.
Well, I think you've shied away from the bolt gun.
I have. I'm a merciful farmer.
Okay, I've got one more, and then I think let's go for a break, and that is a return of the Tories. So we come to 2029, and Reform have not got their act in gear. We've either, I don't know, Katie Lamb, your favourite, or Genric, or even a reformed and reinvigorated Kemi, potentially, come with an exciting and dynamic programme that addresses many of the points that we've made. Do you trust them again? Is that something you would do? You'd vote for them again in order to get a country working again? I mean, obviously, it's a big risk. Fooled me 48 times. At some point, shame on me.
Christ. I would be incredibly reluctant to trust them at this stage. But I wouldn't want to rule out taking back the abusive ex. It might just be they have the most coherent plan. It might be that Reform implodes. Who's to say?
Who's to say?
If one party says, here's our kind of comprehensive plan for kind of fixing the immigration mistakes, for reinvigorating the economy, and it's clearly better than the other parties, I think, and we're going to kind of boot out all the wets. We've said sorry. I don't know. Maybe it's naive.
Well, if you are one of Tom's ex-girlfriends, and clearly
all my ex-girlfriends are lovely.
Clearly, he's feeling in a vulnerable, nostalgic mood. So I would recommend calling him up soon to try and take advantage of it. Listeners, we are knee deep in blood on my end, and Tom is sitting dry as a bone on his. We will be back after a brief, maybe shower and tidy up for some more thoughts. Goodbye. Slaughtering Satan cow. Hello, listeners. This is a free preview episode, and if you want to listen to the full thing, you can subscribe at anglofuturism.co.
And if you go there, you'll also get early previews of guest interviews, occasional bonus episodes, and maybe even, Calum whistling, all that kind of jazz.
Whistling? You'll hear my 3-part rendition of The Men of Harlech.
I think I'm a better whistler than you.
I've never actually gone up against anyone.
But
who would judge?
You will have to subscribe to find out.